Data analysis can play a pivotal role in business decisions and processes. In order to use the data to make confident decisions, we must have the right information for the project and the data must be free from errors. In this video, we will learn how to profile data to discover inconsistencies. Whether we are working with small sets of data or analyzing a spreadsheet with thousands of rows, one of the most difficult parts of the data analysis is finding and keeping clean data. To help with this process and qualify the data, look at these 5 traits: accuracy, completeness, reliability, relevance, and timeliness. Accuracy is the first and most significant aspect to data quality. A data analyst must clean the dataset by removing duplicates, correcting formatting errors, and removing blank rows. Another important aspect of data quality is determining if the information required to complete the dataset is readily available. Why does this matter as a trait for quality data? Let's say we are given the task to calculate the revenues of all sales per region. After collecting the data, we discovered that no regions were specified. This data would then be considered incomplete, and other sources would have to be considered to obtain the data required. Reliability is another vital factor in determining the quality of data. For instance, let's say we are given the task to determine the agent revenue by customer. When gathering the data, we find that agents keep their own records and do not always update the information in the shared company database. With those factors in mind, we would then determine that the data in the shared company database was unreliable, and new processes would need to be established to ensure reliable data. Relevance is another trait of quality data. When collecting information, a data analyst must consider if the data being assembled is really necessary for the project. For example, when reviewing the data related to the sales revenue per customer, information such as customer birthdays and other personal information is also included. By making the determination early to exclude the personal information from the dataset, the analyst would save themselves from having to review unnecessary information. The last factor in determining the quality of the data is timeliness. This trait refers to the availability and accessibility of the selected data. Let's say our sales report is going to be used for weekly employee reviews, but our report is only refreshed once a month. This error in refreshing the data would cause our report to become outdated and would have serious consequences for employee reviews. In this video, we learn the important role of a data analyst in qualifying data. By considering the 5 traits of good quality data, an analyst can save time, avoid serious issues, and have data that is free from errors. In the next video, we will take the collected data and learn how to import it to our spreadsheet. Now that you have learned about the importance of data quality, in this video you will learn how to import data from a text file using the text import wizard, learn how to adjust column widths, and learn how to add and remove columns and rows. As you know, by default, Excel works with .xlsx or .xls files and opens them as workbooks. But Excel can also use data that is in other formats, such as plain text, or data that has been comma separated and tab separated. Sometimes these source files will be saved with a .txt extension and referred to as text files, but others might be saved with a .csv file extension and are typically referred to as CSV files. Here in Notepad, I have opened a text file that contains data about car sales, and it uses comma-separated values, or CSVs, to separate each bit of data in a record. Notice that the top line holds headings, such as manufacturer, model, engine size, and so on, and each one is separated by a comma. We want these to become our headers when we import the file into Excel. The line below these headings is the first line of real data, and again, you can see that each piece of data is also separated by a comma. There are 16 headings, and there are also 16 pieces of data on each of the lines below the headings. If we scroll to the bottom, we can see that last data record is for the Volvo S80. Now, to open the file in Excel, we choose File, Open, and then either select the file from the recently used list or click Browse to find the file we want to import. When we open the file, the text import wizard launches automatically, and it will start to try and determine what your file is. Note that it has been detected as being a delimited file, that is, one that has its data fields separated by a character such as a comma or a tab. As we want the headings to become headers in Excel, we need to ensure that we select the option My Data Has Headers. We can see a mini preview of the data in the preview box below. Then we click Next to proceed in the wizard. In step 2 of the wizard, we need to select our delimiter, that is, which character is separating our pieces of data, so we select comma and deselect any others. Note the data preview now starts to show us what the imported data will look like. You can scroll down and across this preview window to ensure that the data is going to look as you want and expect. It all looks okay, so we'll continue with the wizard. In step 3 of the wizard, we can set the data format for each column. For example, you might want to change a column to text or date format. In this case, we can just accept the default general format and finish the import wizard. In Excel, we can see that the headings in the text file have been imported as a header row. But also notice that some of the columns are not showing all the data. Some of the headings are not showing in full, and some of the data is not shown either. All you can see are a number of hashes in the cells. This is because the column widths are too narrow in some cases. If you remember, you can manually adjust a column's width by dragging the divider across, but to change them all in one go, we select all the columns first, then double-click one of the selected column dividers. We can also do a similar thing with rows by dragging them to make them bigger or smaller, or double-clicking a row divider to auto-size it. There are some columns that we have decided we don't really need, namely vehicle type and latest launch. So let's remove those. This can either be done using the Delete drop-down menu in the Cells group on the Home tab and select Delete Sheet Columns, or by selecting and right-clicking a column and deleting it that way. To add another column, you simply select the column to the right of where you want your new column to be. Then right-click the column and choose Insert. And let's give the header a name, such as Year. To delete a row you don't need, select the row, right-click it, and choose Delete. And to add a row, select the row below the place you want to add your new row, right-click the row, and choose Insert. If you want to save the file as an Excel file, you can either choose File, Save As, or you can click Save As in the yellow tooltip that appeared at the top of the worksheet when we imported the file. Then you would choose Excel Workbook or .xlsx in the Save As type box. In this video, we learned how to import data using the Text Import Wizard. We learned how to adjust column widths, and we learned how to add and remove columns and rows. In the next video, we will discuss the importance of data privacy, including sensitive information and personally identifiable data. In this video, we will learn about data privacy and the regulations that govern the collected data. When collecting customer data, specific regulations apply to how that data can be used. By understanding data privacy regulations and getting familiar with the following 3 fundamentals, you can eliminate the risk of financial penalties and keep the trust of your customers. Confidentiality, collection and use, compliance. Confidentiality is an important element in data privacy, and it acknowledges that the customer's personal information belongs to them. The types of information that can be accessed by a data analyst can range from sales forecasts to employee information, or even patient records. When accessing these types of records, the analyst must be able to recognize the different types of personal data. Personal information, or PI, is any type of information that can be traced back to a specific individual. This type of information can include anything from emails to images. Personally identifiable information, or PII, is specific information that could be used to identify an individual. This type of information could include a social security number or a driver's license number. And lastly, sensitive personal information, or SPI, may not necessarily identify a specific individual, but contains private information that needs to be protected because, if made public, it could possibly be used to harm the individual. This type of information can include data about race, sexual orientation, biometric, or genetic information. By understanding personal data and the associated regulations, we can efficiently anonymize our data by removing unnecessary information. This type of action can help build customer confidence and continue to develop the free flow of information. When searching through data, the analyst must know the location of the company collecting the data and the location of the respondent. Knowing where the data was collected is an essential element of data privacy and what regulations must be applied. The General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, is a regulation specific to the European Union and only applies to the jurisdiction of the individual. A new law created in Brazil, called the LGPD, will take effect in August 2020. These new data policy regulations apply to individuals within Brazil and ignores the location of the data processor. While the United States does not have one country-wide principal law for data privacy, because of this, individual states began to make their own regulations. For instance, California created the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, to better protect customer data. There are also industry-specific regulations that govern the collection and use of sensitive and personal data. For example, in healthcare, HIPAA, or HIPAA, privacy rules govern the collection and disclosure of protected health information. In retail, the PCI standards govern credit card data, and failure to safeguard cardholder information can result in hefty fines. With a basic understanding of these policies, we are able to remain compliant when handling any sensitive information. Unfortunately, breaches in customer data is an all too common occurrence, and understanding how to remain compliant is essential. Understanding the data privacy regulations of the European Union, the United States, and other countries as well as industries is key to keeping data safe. Companies must comply with these privacy regulations at all times, and also make sure policies are readily accessible to employees. For example, let's say a data analyst downloads a spreadsheet of sensitive information. In order to complete the report by Monday morning, the analyst decided to take their work laptop home for the weekend. After driving home, the analyst accidentally left the laptop in their car. The next morning, they found their car had been stolen along with the laptop. Because it is the responsibility of the company to keep customer data safe, this was a breach of privacy when the data left the company property. This type of action could not only cost the company large amounts of money in fines and penalties, but could also reduce customer confidence, causing a significant impact to revenue. While data privacy applies to most data that is collected, there are some instances where these regulations do not apply. In order for these laws and regulations not to apply, the particular collection of data must be completely anonymous. To make data anonymous means to exclude all data which ties it back to a particular individual. While this approach might not be practical in all circumstances, collecting data with privacy in mind could remove privacy limitations and make data collections more accessible. In this video, we learned about the importance of data privacy and the challenges that a data analyst can face when collecting and sorting through data. In the videos in the next lesson, we will learn about different methods for cleaning data in a spreadsheet. In this video, we will listen to several data professionals discuss the importance of data quality and data privacy as they relate to data analysis. Let us start with what is the importance of data quality as it relates to data analysis.
Data quality is of the utmost importance in terms of data and analytics. And the reason behind this is because as soon as what you're presenting does not align with what someone expects, that's the first thing that they tend to go after. Where did you get the data? What's happened to the data? How has it been transformed? Because people like to think that they know and understand their business. And when you start to challenge that, if you don't have the ground to stand on of the data, that it's quality, that it's clean, and that it is from a trusted source, that's when you start to get into a lot of discussions, a lot of debate, and ultimately the plot of what you're trying to present gets lost.
The backbone of any successful data analysis project is good quality data. There's a common term in computer science called garbage in, garbage out, which is essentially if you read in bad quality data, you can expect to get bad quality results. So there's really nothing more important when doing a data analysis than making sure that you're working with good quality data. And it's really important to sense check the data yourself and really feel comfortable that the data you're using is of a really high quality.
Data accuracy is above all garbage in, garbage out. It's a waste of time to analyze data of poor quality, and it might mislead the business direction.
The integrity of the data that you're using or providing for someone else to use is of the utmost importance. Data is used to determine when or where to launch a product, if a division is profitable or not, and it's easy to get things confused if you're not paying attention to the details. Using inventory as an example, if you're looking at inventory at a SKU level and you accidentally pick the wrong SKU to analyze, and then you draw these conclusions that this particular item isn't profitable when in fact it is. So that's a major decision for a company to make, obviously. So the expectation is that there will be lots of due diligence, but in the beginning, if you start off with bad data and then you build on that only to later realize that it wasn't a good idea, you've lost time, energy, effort, and in some cases, trust.
Thank you for those viewpoints. What about the importance of data privacy as it relates to data analysis?
Data privacy is incredibly important, especially when you're working in industries like pharmaceuticals or healthcare. But that's not where it stops. We have to have the ability to make sure that the users are getting the appropriate level of data based on their roles and their permissions. Now we can do this through a number of cuts of the data specific to each geography or each function, or in some tools such as Cognos Analytics, we can start to build out that as part of our model. Within there, you can say who has access to what, whether it's at a granular level of this person can see data in Canada or the US, or whether it's simply this person can see this report in its entirety or not. There's lots of different ways to handle this, but data privacy is of the utmost importance across all industries.
In today's world, data privacy is a huge thing. On the tax side, especially of our business, we have what we call PII, personal identifiable information. We have to protect that, and so we can't just send things through email. We don't send tax returns, or even actually in our business period, we don't send things through email that have sensitive PII data in it. We encrypt it. We make sure the email is encrypted, or we use software, some certain softwares that will allow us to not show the social security numbers or the names or the date of births. And what will happen is it has a certain sequence, and we share that with the client by calling them. We don't put that in an email, and we certainly don't put that in the same email with the encrypted information, because we want to make sure that you're always safe. So we have to make sure we're protecting it at all costs.
Now that we have learned about the importance of data quality and data privacy, in this video we will learn how to deal with inaccurate data, how to remove empty rows, and how to remove duplicated data. It's very common when collecting or importing data, whether through manual or automated processes, to get errors and inconsistencies in your data. This can be as simple as spelling mistakes, extra white space, or the wrong case used in text, to empty rows or missing values in your data, to inaccurate or duplicated data. Having these errors and inconsistencies in your data can lead to issues with formulas not working, with unsuccessful sorting and filtering operations, and therefore inadequately visualized and presented data findings. These data errors and inconsistencies require you to carry out some form of data cleaning routine to improve the quality and usability of the data. Let's start off with one of the easier of those tasks, which is spell checking. In Excel, this works in pretty much the same way as you may have already encountered in applications such as Microsoft Word or other common word processing applications. I have some data here relating to the sales of toy vehicles, and the first thing we need to do is select what data we wish to check for spelling. In this case, we will try column K, which contains the product line data. Then we click Spelling, which is on the Review tab. Well, that seems to be okay. So let's try the country information in column T. So we do have an error here where a country name has been misspelt, or more likely mistyped. We just click Change if we are happy with the spelling suggestion, or we could choose another suggestion from the list, or even ignore this error if we know the data is correct, but in this case, we will change it. Here's another typo for a country name, and here's one more. So that seems to be all the errors in this column. Let's try the final column now, which is the deal size in column X. Here is a misspelling of the word small, and another for medium, and that seems to be all for this column. The next inconsistency we will look for is empty rows. Empty rows in your data can cause lots of issues relating to moving around your data, working with formulas, and sorting and filtering. Therefore, it's very important to remove them from your data. If you remember from an earlier lesson, when we click Control plus down arrow, it should take us to the end of that column of data. But notice if we do that in this data set, the cursor keeps stopping when we get to an empty row, meaning that the data set is essentially being split into multiple sections, separated by these empty rows. That's not good, so let's resolve that now. We have a couple of options. One option is to just manually scroll down the sheet looking for empty rows and deleting each one, which is easy enough and fine to do if you only have a small amount of data. But imagine if you were dealing with hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of rows. That would be a very laborious and time-consuming process. There is a much better way, which involves selecting all our data first, either using the mouse or the Control plus Shift plus End keyboard shortcut. Then we select the filter icon on the Data tab. We can now see that each column has a filter icon next to the column header. If we then select the customer name column filter in column M, then uncheck Select All, then scroll down to the bottom of the list, we can check the item called Blanks, and then click OK. This will now show only the empty rows at the top of our sheet. This can be quite hard to see, but if you look in the row numbers, you can see that rows 28, 29, 65, 73, 74, 75, and 117 are listed at the top and are highlighted in blue text. We can now select these rows either using the mouse or going to the first cell in the first data row, which is A28, and then using the Control plus Shift plus End keyboard shortcut. Then delete the offending empty rows. We then need to clear the filter and turn it off so we can view our data again. Now, if we go back to the first row in the top of the data sheet and try the Control plus Down shortcut again to go to the end of the data column, it will work. The next inconsistency we'll look for is duplicated rows of data. It's quite common for duplicate data rows to exist in your imported data, caused either by human input error or an error in the import process. There are two ways of doing this in Excel. The first way includes reviewing the data you plan to remove first before deleting it to ensure you are deleting the right data. This is our preferred method as it provides an additional level of data security. The second method, which we will also show you, is simpler, as you don't review the data to be removed first, but it lacks the security of the first method. It's important to select a column of data that you would not expect to have duplicate values in. For example, if we consider the price each column, which is C, we would expect lots of these values to be repeated because the unit price of some products is the same. So this is a bad example of a column to use to find duplicates. Instead, let's use the sales column in column E because it is far less likely that these values will be duplicated in the normal process of things, as they are the total sales for each order. So we select the column and choose conditional formatting, then highlight cells rules, and then duplicate values. When we click OK and scroll down the sheet, we can see that only a few values have been identified as being duplicates. There seem to be duplicate values in rows 36 to 40 and in rows 74 to 78. Let's zoom out so we can see both duplicate sections together. It seems like these are in fact exact duplicate entries and are likely to be an input error. Let's delete the second section of duplicate rows as they are out of sequence, as they relate to motorcycle sales and are in the ships section of the sheet. So that was the first and recommended method of removing duplicate rows of data, which previews the data to be removed first. Now, let's try the second, simpler but less secure method. Let's go back to 100% zoom and go back to the top of the worksheet. This time, we select the whole datasheet, and on the Data tab, we use the Remove Duplicates button. We then unselect all the columns, then only select the Sales column, and the duplicate rows are deleted. The last cleaning process we'll look at in this video is using the Find and Replace feature to repair some misspelt surnames in the Customer Contacts column. Find and Replace tools are under Find and Select on the home page in Excel. If you have used other Office products, such as Word, it should be familiar to you already. We've had an email from a Swedish customer informing us that we have her surname spelled incorrectly on her order sheets. So we type the misspelled surname into the Find What box and click Find Next. Then click it again to see there are multiple incorrect entries. If we click Find All instances are listed, and we can open the Replace tab to enter a name to replace the incorrect spellings. Her surname should be Larson with a double S, so we'll replace all instances with that corrected spelling. That looks better, and we are finished. In this video, we learned how to deal with inaccurate data, how to remove empty rows, and how to remove duplicated data. In the next video, we will look at changing the case of text, fixing date formatting errors, and trimming whitespace from data. Now that we've learned how to deal with inaccurate data, how to remove empty rows, and how to remove duplicated rows, in this video we'll look at changing the case of text, fixing date formatting errors, and trimming whitespace from data. When you collect or receive data from various sources, it's quite common to find that your data contains text in mixed case, that is, some in uppercase, some in lowercase, and some in capitalized proper case, also known as sentence case. Some of this may be intentional, but often it's not. Excel doesn't have a change case button like there is in Microsoft Word, so you need to use other methods to perform this data cleaning task. Those methods are functions, namely the upper, lower, and proper functions. You can use these functions to help you change the case of text in your data. You can see that the header row here is using all uppercase characters. So if you want to change that to use proper case, then you need to add another row to put the function in. This is referred to as a helper row. The proper function is simple to use. Just type equals, then proper, then open parenthesis, then the cell reference, in this case A1, then close parenthesis, and press enter. Here you can see that the result in A2 is in proper case. Now you can try and drag the formula right across to column X by using the fill handle on A2. But this can be tricky when you have a lot of columns, so let's try another way. Instead of dragging, you can use Shift plus right arrow to select the columns across to X first. Then press F2 to bring the cursor into focus in cell A2. Then you hold down the Control key while you press enter, and it fills across for you. You might think that you could now remove the original row, but look at what happens when you do. You get a ref error because the formula is referencing an invalid reference, and the header row cells now contain just the failed formula rather than the actual header text. So you need to undo that, and instead, you copy the contents of the helper row to row 1. But when you paste, you need to choose the Paste Values option. Now the header row cells just contain header text, and you can remove the helper row in row 2. Now let's use the upper function to change text from proper case to uppercase. Insert a column to the right of the column you want to change. This will be a helper column. Then you type the formula containing the upper function in the first data cell in this new helper column. Again, it's a simple formula. You type equals, then upper, then open parenthesis, then the cell reference, in this case T2, and then close the parenthesis and press enter. You can see the result in the country name in uppercase, and you can then copy that formula down the rest of the column by double-clicking the fill handle cross symbol. As before, you then copy and paste the contents of the helper column to the original column, but use the Paste Values option. Now you can delete the helper column. Next, we'll use the lower function to change text from proper case to lowercase. As before, you insert a column to the right of the column you want to change. This will be another helper column. Then, you type the formula containing the lower function in the first data cell in the helper column. Once again, it's a very simple formula. You type equals, then lower, then open parenthesis, then the cell reference, in this case K2, and then close parenthesis and press enter. You can now see the result is the product line data in lowercase, and you can now copy the formula down to the rest of the column by double-clicking the fill handle once more. As before, you then copy and paste the contents of the helper column to the original column by ensuring you use the Paste Values option. Now you can delete the helper column. It's quite common to receive data that has a mixture of date formats, or that uses a date format that isn't suitable for your region. Now let's look at how to change the format of some dates. You can see that this date format is currently using a 2-digit day, a 2-digit month, and a 4-digit year value. When you open the number format dialog box, you can see in the locale box that this is an English or United Kingdom date format. You want to use a US date format, so you first change the locale to English, United States. In this list, you can see there are several date options to choose from. Let's choose one that uses the full month name, then a 2-digit day and a 4-digit year value. You could then copy this formula to the rest of the date cells. However, if you want to format these dates using your own custom format, you can do that too. In the number format list, you select Custom and then choose an existing format that is similar to what you want, and simply modify it to create a new custom format. Here we'll have the day, then 3-letter month, then 4-digit year. To apply that new custom date format to the rest of the column, you could either use the Format Painter tool, or you can select the rest of the column and choose the new column format from the custom list in the number format dialog box. You might find that your data has some white space, that is, unwanted spaces in your data. Here you can see that we have some spaces at the start, some spaces at the end, and some unwanted double spaces in the middle of our data. We'll first have a look at what you can do to clean up these unwanted spaces in your data by using the Find and Replace feature in Excel. So you first select all the data, then on the Home tab, you click Find and Select, then Replace. To get rid of double spaces, you enter a double space in the Find What box and a single space in the Replace With box. Then you click Find Next and choose Replace for each item you want to change. You could click Replace All to do all the fixes in one go, but unless you are absolutely sure of the changes, it's better practice to check and replace each one in sequence in case there are some valid reasons for these extra spaces. If you have a very large data set, you might also choose Replace All to save you a lot of time. So using the Find and Replace feature got rid of most of those unwanted white spaces, but not all of them. We removed double spaces using that feature, but we also have some single spaces left at the start and end of some of the cells. You can't use Find and Replace to remove single spaces. Otherwise, you would lose all spaces in your data, including standard spaces between words, which you don't want to remove. But there is another tool you can use to clear spaces from cells, and that's the trim function. To use the trim function, you once again insert a helper column. The trim function is simple to use. Just type equals, then trim, then open parenthesis, then the cell reference, in this case, M2, then close parenthesis and press enter. You can then double-click the fill handle symbol to copy this formula down to the remainder of the column. Now, you need to copy the contents of the new column N to column M, and remember once again to paste using the Paste Values option. You can now see that those erroneous spaces have been removed, or more accurately speaking, have been trimmed. And lastly, you can remove the helper column. In this video, we learned how to change the case of text, how to change date formatting, and how to trim white space from data. In the next video, we will discuss how to use the flash fill and text to columns features in Excel to help clean data. Now that we've learned how to change the case of text, how to change date formatting, and how to trim white space from data, in this video we'll discuss how to use the flash fill and text to columns features in Excel to help clean data. We used flash fill briefly earlier in the course as a quick method of entering data that fits a specific pattern, such as the names of months or days of the week, but it can also be used as a data cleaning tool. It can split a column of full names into two separate columns for the forename and surname, and it can also help to modify the naming convention used in a column of names. For example, in the Vehicle Toy Sales worksheet, there is a column containing the last names of contacts and another containing their first names. If you want to use the flash fill feature to combine these names into one name column, you first insert a helper column. Let's call it Contact Name. Then, in the first row in the new column, you enter the full name of the first contact in the format of your choice. For example, you might want surname, then a comma, then the forename. Or you might want surname and just an initial, and so on. In this case, let's just enter the name in the standard format of forename, then surname, with a space between them, and then we press enter. Next, you'll start typing the second contact's name, and you'll see that Flash Fill displays a preview of the remaining names for you. If you're happy with what's in the preview, all you have to do is press enter, and it fills in the remaining names for you right down the column. It even works when there are two names in one of the columns, such as Wing C here and Dakuna here. Now you can remove the original columns if you no longer need them. So in the previous task, we saw how to combine two columns of data into one column using Flash Fill. Now let's see how to use it to modify the naming convention in a column. Let's switch to the Customer Contacts worksheet. Then, in the first data row of the next column, that is B2, we type the name of the first contact using whatever naming convention we want. We'll use surname, then comma, then space, then the forename, and press enter. Again, when we start typing the second contact's name in the next row down, that is B3, FlashFill detects the pattern and fills in the remaining names in column B when we press enter. You could then copy and paste the column header and delete the original column A. What we couldn't do with FlashFill was take a single column with two names in and split that into two separate columns. We need to use the text to columns feature to do that. So we'll close this worksheet and we won't save the changes. Now let's see how the text to columns feature can help with data cleaning too. As the name suggests, and unlike FlashFill, the text to columns feature can take a column containing multi-part text and split that text into one or more other columns. This can be useful for splitting any multi-part text, such as names or addresses, into separate component parts. Let's open the Customer Contacts worksheet again. Then we'll add column headings for the next two columns and copy the cell format used in the first column header. Then we'll widen the columns. If we then select the data in column A from A2 to A23, and on the Data tab click Text to Columns, a wizard is launched. On the first page of the wizard, ensure that Delimited is selected. On the second page, ensure that only space is selected as the delimiter. On the third page of the wizard, click the little arrow next to Destination and select B2 on the worksheet, then click the little arrow again to return to the wizard. We're now finished with this wizard. You can now see that the full customer contact names in column A have now been successfully split into two new columns in B and C. And you could now remove column A if you no longer need it. We'll close this worksheet, and again, we won't save the changes. You can also achieve the same result using functions. This would be required if you were using Excel for the web, the online version of Excel, as this doesn't have the text to columns feature. There's also a bit more flexibility with functions, which can be especially useful if you have names that are complex and mixed, such as having hyphenated names, or some names with a middle name, some with two middle initials, and some with no middle initial. So we open the Customer Contacts worksheet again. Then we'll add column headings for the next two columns and copy the cell format used in the first column header. Then we'll widen the columns. Next, we'll enter the formula in B2 to extract the forename part of the name. This formula extracts 5 characters from cell A2, starting from the left and including the space. Then, in cell C2, we enter the formula to extract the surname part of the name. This formula extracts 7 characters from cell A2, starting from the right. Then we'll double-click the fill handle in cell B2 to use autofill to complete the column. And we do the same to the fill handle in cell C2 to use autofill to complete that column also. In this video, we learned how to use FlashFill and text-to-columns features in Excel to help clean data. In this video, we will listen to several data professionals discuss issues around data quality. Can you tell us your experience with poor quality data and the cleaning of that data?
A large portion of my time is spent cleaning, verifying, checking data before I run an analysis. Working in healthcare, most of the information captured is based off of what someone's put in. So humans can't be calibrated. Two people can have a similar situation and look at things slightly differently. So it's up to me to make sure that if one describes something as navy blue and the other person describes it as dark blue, that I consolidate it and make it blue. That's just an example. We don't normally do that in healthcare. But the thought is that you always have to check the integrity of the information before you do your analysis to make sure that your results are accurate.
No data is going to be perfect. That's an unfortunate reality in the world in which we live in. Databases and data is collected for the broadest possible purpose, but oftentimes there are still things that are missing or not quite in the format that we want, whether that's collecting date and time as a single field, whereas when we're doing our analysis, we want to be able to break it out by day, month, and quarter. These are things that we can take into consideration. There's a lot of different cleansing activities that can be done and can be undertaken to help you get something that's specific and works for you and the way you want to work.
I have had experiences with poor quality data where I'm reviewing financial statements and I'm looking at margins, calculating ratios, trying to understand if what I'm looking at is, number one, directionally correct, but two, am I looking at the right thing? Are all of these costs, current costs, relevant to the period that I'm analyzing? Has all of the data been captured? Do I have all of the revenue for a given month? Then you have to go back and look at the sources, scrub that information to validate that what you're seeing is correct. And from an accounting perspective, if that data is incorrect or out of period, then adjustments need to be made to the general ledger, which houses the data to properly reflect what's happening.
Poor data quality can really come into play and cause discussions that don't need to be happening. They can cause you to be second guessed. They can cause you to not be able to be firm and present your case and your data reliably. Now, if this is the case, there's several different ways we can handle this. One is to go all the way back to the source to ensure that the source data is being pulled appropriately, or simply being able to outline and be very specific and direct in terms of what transformations or changes have been done to the data through tracking this in something like Watson Knowledge Catalog and being able to present that to your audience.
If you're filtering and sorting data and you find that it's wrong, you have to go back and fix things. That time could have been spent working on other deliverables. And again, it can call the data integrity into question if you're constantly having to redo or reiterate certain parts of data. And quite frankly, it can be frustrating at times if you're habitually having to do that. So paying attention to the details and the minutia so that you're not wasting time backtracking on something that you could have fixed early on are just some of the many benefits of ensuring that your data quality is good.
Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. If you know someone who could benefit from this information, please share it with them. We would love to hear your thoughts on this learning course, so please leave a comment below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.